In this video, we're going to look at the Area 2D shape and how to detect collisions for points or removing objects. So I'm going to just create a folder with that name. You can name this project anything you'd like to, but we'll go into this fairly quickly. I'll try to go as quick as I can while still explaining the basics, but at this point you should have a starter knowledge of the Godot platform, and then we're just going to talk about signals in this video. So let's go to 2D, create a new level scene. We'll just call that level. We'll save it as level. And now, just like usual, we have a single place that we're going to put our objects later. Let's make a new object, and this time we're going to use a rigid body. And this is a rigid body 2D. It needs a collision shape, and that collision shape we can just make into a rectangle. A rigid body 2D is an object that is a physics object that does not take player input controls. So in other words, you don't control where it goes, but it is it's set to be reacting physically to the world around it. So you could bump into it, you can knock it over, you can pick things up and throw them around, but generally speaking, yeah, it's not to be controlled by the player, but it exists in space. So I just added an icon, I resized it, and then fit the collision body to that. I'm going to rename this to falling body and save. And then we'll go back to level. If we drag the falling body into the scene and we click on play, it's going to ask us which scene is the main scene. Let's choose select and choose level, so you make sure that you don't make any mistakes there. That way when we start the game, it will show the level scene, and in our level scene we have the falling body object which falls, which is great. Now we need to add a new scene, and this scene is going to be when we start using Area 2D. So we'll start with an Area 2D node, which also needs a collision shape. And once again, we'll just add a rectangle shape for ease. We'll zoom in here, and then we'll drag on the icon, set the icon position to be 0, and then I'm going to resize that collision shape to be the size roughly of the icon. Of course, be as precise as you want to be, but for now, that's fine for me. So I'm going to rename this to detecting zone, and we'll save this as, of course, detecting zone. We'll go back to the level scene and drag detecting zone onto the level scene like this. Now if we click play, what you're going to see is that the rigid body falls directly through the detecting zone. I called it a zone for a reason, because Area 2D does not hold physical space, so it doesn't stop things from moving, it doesn't interact that way. But it does detect if something passed through it. So, and that's if it passes through that collision shape. But how do we make things happen based on that collision is what we need to do in the level scene. We're going to make some scripts. So let's click on detecting zone, and let's add a script. And now this script doesn't have anything in it at all, but as long as you have detecting zone still selected, we are going to add a new function, and I can go back to the 2D view. You can do this from 2D view or script view, it doesn't matter. But what I'm going to have is I'm going to add a new function that will automatically execute, that'll automatically happen if a body enters into the detection zone. So we'll go to, first we may need to make sure that we are clicking on detecting zone here, or the Area 2D shape, and then go over to the right and choose node signals. And then this is a list of all of the many senses that your object has. So a sense, just like our 5 senses, touch, taste, smell, sight, etc., these objects can detect certain qualities or certain things happening. So you'll notice if you click on a different object, like falling body, you get different senses because it is a different kind of object. That's a rigid body. The Area 2D has Area 2D senses, and one of the ones that we want is called body entered. So we are detecting if a body, like the falling body, enters into this zone. So as long as we have, again, detecting zone selected, we have our Area 2D area options, and we have this one here, body entered. Double click on that, and then we want to attach this script, this signal to this script here, the one that we already created. And basically what that means is the detecting zone is just going to talk to itself. If somebody bumps into it, it's going to tell itself, hey, somebody bumped into me. And then it decides what it will do with that information. So we'll just click connect, and here we go. In our script, same script as before, we now have a new function that says on body entered. So if a body enters into that zone, this function will automatically happen, will execute. Everything inside this area will happen by itself. So we can just add a new line here, and I'll show you a great command, queue_free. Queue_free is Godot's equivalent of delete me or kill me. So it's the option of removing the object. So if I click play now, and our rigid body touches the Area 2D, the Area 2D will run the script that kills itself. It deleted itself, so it's gone now. If you don't want the Area 2D to disappear, but maybe it's a spike trap, for example, where you want your character to die, then we would write body dot queue_free. So that means for that body that's touching this object, I want you to run this. So now we check this, and we should see the opposite happens. Area 2D stays, and the body disappears. Okay, so we'll leave that as that for now. We'll go back to 2D, and let's add a point system. So to have points, we need to have a way of seeing our points first, just so it makes a little bit more sense. So let's go click on our level, add a label. And the label starts up here. It's very tiny. Let's make a couple of changes first. So go over to the inspector. Let's give it some text so that we can actually see something written. I'm just writing, I'll write hello for now. And then I will scroll down here, go down to theme overrides, font size, click on font, and then change that to something much bigger. So now we can see the text like that. And if you go back to the top and change this to high, it changes on the screen there. So because this is our point system, I'm going to make it just start as 0. And then from 0, we need it to change to update to a new score if we get points. And we're going to get points if the falling body touches the detecting zone, which that we should automatically get 1 point when it hits. So we have everything set up, but we need to put a script on our level so that we can control our label and save our points somewhere. So let's go to our level, add a script, and then let's do a couple of things. First thing, let's make a place to save our points. Of course, points at the very beginning of our game. This is like the first time that it loads this script. It's going to figure out that our points should be 0 because that's the beginning of our game. We don't have anything yet. And then down here, we want to do something to control the label because this is the function that is running forever. So we can just drag that label right into the code here, and then write .text, which means I want to change the text. This, and we can say new text, for example. So what's going to happen right now is when this script loads in the level script loads, it's going to create a variable called points and set that as 0, but we don't see that. It's just saved in the background. And then in the function process, it's going to take that label that we just created, which is right here, this big 0, and it's going to change the text to new text. So if we click play, we should see new text just right away. There we go. It's a bit large, so we didn't see the rest of it. But instead of new text, we want it to be always updating to the latest value of points. So instead of new text, we could write points, right? Because that's the variable here. And you'd think that maybe if I make points 4, then this would be 4, and then it'll show 4. Almost, but there's one problem. Points is a number, so we need to change that number into a string by using this command. So it just turns it into characters that are able to be used as text. So now I changed points to 4, if you notice. So if I run the code, it should now display a 4. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so we've got a lot of the basics down, and we just need to, let's fix this back to 0. We just need to add a way to add points when that collision happens. So let's go back to the 2D view just so we see what's happening. We need the detecting zone to shout out, to yell out, not just to itself, as it does right now when it deletes this body. That's handling its own problems in a way. But we also want it to yell out to the level and send out a signal to the level to say, hey level, I need you to add some points for me, because let's save those points somewhere. So the detecting zone, let's go back to the signals here. Signals, we already have this one signal set. But if we just double click on body entered again, and this time we connect the script to the level script, and all we need to do is just add 1 to points. That's it. Because remember, points is defined up here as 0. And then if something collides, add 1 to points, and then at all times meaning through the process function, at all times show the label text to be equal to the points. So if points ever changes, we will see immediately. And let's see. It should start as 0 and become 1. Great. So as you see, this is the basic mechanism for saving points in a variable, as well as the mechanisms for killing the player if the player touches something that is a death trap, or a method for the character to pick up an object and add a point. So it's just as easy as going into the scripts in the detecting zone. Instead of killing the player, we can kill that object, and it still adds a point, and now it will look like Mario picking up a coin, right? It just passes right by and eats that and gets a point. So coins, collisions, death traps, points, all this stuff, they all really work together in this very basic way with signals. So keep that in mind, give it a try, see what you can do.